Hello biology students, and welcome to video 2 on the excretory system. So yesterday in video 1 you saw some information about the structure of the kidney and the structure of the nephron. So we're now going to talk about the function of the kidney and the function of the nephron, which is the main functions of the urinary system are to form urine and to excrete urine. So exciting stuff. So the 3 steps of urine formation are going to be filtration, reabsorption, and secretion. So those are the 3 steps we're going to talk about today. Okay. So let's start with filtration. Remember, filtration is the first step of urine formation. So this is going to happen in the nephron. Actually, everything we talk about is going to happen in the nephron. And this is going to more specifically occur between the glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule. So remember yesterday, the glomerulus was that little ball of blood vessels that was associated with the nephron, and the Bowman's capsule was that little piece that went around the glomerulus. So what we're going to be doing in filtration is we're literally going to be filtering the blood. So the blood is going to enter the kidney and enter the glomerulus, and then we're going to take the water and small solutes out of the blood and put them into our nephron. So we're going to extract water and small solutes from the blood and have them enter the nephron. So some of these small solutes include things like water, glucose, salts, amino acids, and vitamins. Those are all things we want to keep, and also things we want to get rid of, like urea, that nitrogenous waste. Okay, so the way this works is the renal artery, so renal, by the way, means kidney, so this is really the kidney artery, brings blood to the glomerulus, because remember the glomerulus is just a net of capillaries, and in capillaries and in any blood vessels, there's lots of blood pressure. And this pressure forces the water and solutes out of the glomerulus and into the Bowman's capsule, so into the little part of the nephron. And then from the Bowman's capsule, it then enters the renal tubule, which is the next little part of the nephron, and that's what we call filtrate. So that water and solute that went into the Bowman's capsule and into the renal tubule, we call filtrate. So some things that don't leave the blood. So things like plasma proteins, blood cells, platelets, these are all big things. So even though blood pressure is forcing them against the walls of the glomerulus, they're way too big to pass over from the glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule. So those things stay in the blood. And then this blood, those things that had stayed in the blood, they leave the glomerulus and go into the renal vein. So basically the renal artery brings the blood to the nephron, and the renal vein brings any blood away that did not enter the nephron. Okay, so here's a little picture. So here, the blood's going to enter via the renal artery, this red thing here. Arteries are always red in pictures. It's then going to go into the glomerulus, this net of capillaries. Blood pressure is going to force the water and small solutes into the renal tubule here. And then those big cells, like the blood cells, platelets, plasma proteins, and things that were too big, are going to just exit the glomerulus via the renal vein, this blue thing. And it's not really showing the connection, but it does exit via the vein. Okay, so that was the first step. So the second step is going to be reabsorption, and the third step is going to be secretion. So one thing that always confuses students is that reabsorption and secretion, those 2 words are in reference to the blood. So with filtration, we were filtering the blood. In reabsorption, we're going to be reabsorbing things back into the blood. And in secretion, remember, secretion means to leave. So in secretion, things are going to be leaving the blood. They're all in reference to the blood, not to the nephron. Okay, so let's talk about step 2, reabsorption. So here, remember, in filtration, we just took everything that was small, we just took it out of the blood and put it into the nephron. But now, there are some things that we don't want to urinate out. There are some things that you want to keep in your body. So things like water and solutes, like glucose, salts, ions, amino acids, those things we want to keep. So those things are returned back to the blood. They're reabsorbed by the blood. So this helps the body to retain things that we initially got rid of via filtration. So let's throw back to earlier in the year. So things like glucose and amino acids, those are pretty large and pretty polar, so we have to use active transport to get them back into the blood. So salt, we know, is charged, so we also have to use active transport to get that back into the blood. But water, our good old friend water, will just follow by osmosis, because if the concentration of salt, glucose, and amino acids are very high in the blood, the osmotic concentration will be in favor to have the water re-enter the blood as well. So now we've put everything we want to keep back into the blood, and that's the only thing left in the renal tubule is waste, and that waste we call urine. So most of that urine passes through the renal pelvis, that part of the kidney, the inside piece, and exits the body. And it turns out that almost all of the water is reabsorbed during reabsorption. Okay, so then the third step, we did filtration, reabsorption, and the third step is secretion. So remember, this is in reference to the blood. So we're going to be secreting things from the blood. Things are going to be leaving the blood. So this is where things that are still in the blood that are bad, we get rid of them, because not all of the things left the blood during filtration. So things like excess hydrogen ions that are making our blood a little bit too acidic. This box is supposed to be an arrow, by the way. So those leave the blood and go into the filtrate. They join all that waste. Any drugs or poisons that are in the blood that were perhaps too large to leave during filtration are actively transported into the proximal tubule to get rid of them, so they join the filtrate. Okay, so here's a picture. So here's my long renal tubule. So it's just that tubule it's usually all twisted on itself, but I've just drawn it all out. And basically, between the proximal tubule, the loop of Henle, and the distal tubule, you can see we have some things that are like over here. These blue arrows are things that are leaving the bloodstream and entering the nephron, entering this renal tubule after the fact, after filtration. Remember, filtration is going to happen in the glomerulus. I'm going to get reabsorption, so my salt and my amino acids and my water are going to go back into the blood. Then I have some things exiting the blood and going into the renal tubule, like anything with the blue arrow here. So ions, some poisons. So here's another picture, a nice summary picture. So first I have filtration, where I take everything out of the blood, good and bad, put it into the Bowman's capsule and the renal tubule. Then I have reabsorption, where the good things go back into the blood. Okay, so I'm drawing them going from the yellow part back into the blood there. And then finally, I have secretion, where the bad things that are still in the blood go into my waste tube. Okay, so I'm having things leaving the blood and going into that tubule there. So finally, the last step is urine formation. So I've gotten filtration in the glomerulus. I've gotten reabsorption back into the blood. That's my blue arrows. I've gotten some secretion. I don't know where the secretion is on this picture. But secretion would be when things exited the blood and went into the renal tubule. And finally, I'm left with just bad stuff in the renal tubule. So things like urine, drugs, toxins, poisons. And those go into the collecting duct, the end of the nephron, and they leave via the renal pelvis, the inside of the kidney, to be urinated out of the body. Okay. So this process is called excretion. So the urine is going to leave the kidney. It's going to go in the collecting duct and leave the kidney via the ureters. So the ureters are the tubes that go between the kidney and the bladder. And then urine is stored in the bladder until it's urinated out via the urethra. Oh my goodness, I didn't realize how bad this wording is here. Okay, so let me read it to you. So it says urine is stored in the bladder and urine leaves the body via the urethra. I didn't realize that the words had gotten so messed up. Basically, here's the kidneys. The tubes going to the bladder are called the ureters. Then we have the bladder, and then the urethra is the tube that exits the body. So there you go. That's video 2 of the excretory system.